when the white people came here and took our land, they didn't come and take our land as an individual. They took it as settlers and then pushed us to a land that is not even productive and made us to stay like sardines in congested environments with no economic opportunities. It is white people who must be ashamed of what they've done to us. You cannot turn tables now and want to blame me for the crimes committed by white people. It is a white regime that killed children in 1976. It is the white regime that killed children in the 80s and in the early 90s. It is white people who engaged in the wars of dispossession and forcefully took our land and our cows. Why can't you take responsibility? Why can't you for once just say sorry for the crimes we've committed against you? Why do you want to become victims when we are the biggest victims here? When we have lost everything? When we as black people remain a traumatized nation? A nation that doesn't know what the future holds for them. At least you are guaranteed the future. At least you know if it doesn't work for you here, you can go somewhere else. We've got nowhere to go. And then you come here and want to accuse me, a victim of racism, of being a racist. It's a huge insult, not only to me, but to black people.
Shalom. This is the brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rokah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, all right, to the Akwath who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. This is Habakkuk chapter 2, and I'll start at verse 6. And it reads, "Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay? Shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee? And thou shalt be for booties unto them. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein." All right. Verse 10 reads, "Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and hast sinned against thy soul. For the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer it. Woe to him that buildeth the town with blood, and establisheth a city by iniquity." All right, I want to go into a lesson through the Spirit based on the clip that you saw of a politician in South Africa. All right, now his name, for edification's sake, is, let's see, his name is Malema. All right, and you can see it on the bottom of the clip. But he recently had this, he was called into court. All right. And I wanted to focus on the statement that he made. All right. Concerning the shame that has been Esau's glory for so long. All right. And for those who don't know, Esau Edom is the self-proclaimed so-called white man. All right. Their biblical nationality is Esau Edom. All right. And the scriptures describe his rulership, all right, as one that liveth by the sword, all right, that coveteth and taketh by force. All right. And now we're in a time where those of the other nations are beginning to rise up. Now, for edification's sake, those people who reside in South Africa today, all right, are the Canaanites biblically. All right. Now, of course, there are Israelites amongst that nation. All right. But just concerning Malema and who he represents, his people, all right, the South African people, as they're called today, really go back to Canaan. But this is a highlight of something that's happening globally. All right. What he mentions about the coveting and the taking of fields in South Africa is not an isolated incident. These things have happened all across the planet. Even if you deal with China and Moab, all right, Japan, all right, Hong Kong, all of these different places, you've noticed that Esau, Edom, all right, has roamed the world and coveted fields and taken them by force. All right, now we'll go back to Habakkuk, the second chapter, and start up. But let me go to Micah, the second chapter, and the first verse. And it reads, "Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage." All right. And just like Malima mentioned, they hold themselves not guilty concerning what they have taken, all right, violently, all right, and have refused to return. All right. When you deal with the masks that were originally in the western part of Africa, I believe Nigeria, the British stole those masks, and there was a big confrontation or controversy as the Nigerian government requested that those stolen items be returned from the British Museum to their location, back to their home. All right, you had Edomites who tried to justify what was done. And this is happening globally. But what you notice about this statement that this individual Malima is making is that this is not isolated either. You have many nations that are beginning to rise up and take up this proverb against Esau, Edom, wherever they are. All right. Now let's go back to Habakkuk chapter 2. And I want to start at 4. It reads, "Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay." And this is exactly what Malima said. All right, you have certain Edomites, all right, who have risen up. All right, whether it's the Iranian government, all right, whether it's some spokespeople or spokespersons in India. Globally, you're starting to have the nations rise up against Esau's rulership. All right, and they're starting to speak against the atrocities. All right, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. All right, as a matter of fact, Obadiah prophesied of this. Obadiah 1:1, and it reads, "The vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord power concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, Who shall bring me down to the ground?" And this is why Malima mentioned their refusal to even acknowledge the wickedness that they've done. All right, that's really the pride of their heart. And the scriptures say the pride of their heart have deceived them, because eventually, all right, what goes around comes back around. And we're in the time through the Spirit where the Lord is beginning to stir up a spirit of rebellion amongst the other nations against Esau, Edom. All right. And that goes into Isaiah, the 14th chapter. All right. Isaiah 14, and I'll jump down to verse 9. And it reads, "Hell from beneath is moved for thee, to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, Art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us?" All right, and this is why you see countries like North Korea begin to increase the rhetoric, all right, of, this missile ability to touch the mainland of the U.S., all right, which is really the spearhead of Esau Edom's rulership. All right, but you're starting to see that other nations are beginning to speak up concerning the atrocities, all right, whether it's economic or through physical warfare. All right, you're starting to see nations begin to rise up against Esau and let it be known that he's despised. All right, and this guy, Malima, is just one of many examples. All right, and for those who don't know, if you can look it up, all right, on your own time. But for a long time, these past few years at least, Malema was one of the politicians for a particular party in South Africa who was vouching to have the farmland taken from the Edomites in South Africa and given back to the native people of that land, all right, which are biblical Canaanites, but are identified as South Africans. All right. And he's been brought to court, and this statement that he made is one of many statements he's made before in the past when you look at his press conferences. But it highlights an important issue in prophecy, that the Lord will stir up the dead ones, the chief ones, the kings of all the other nations, who will begin to rise up, who will begin to lift their heads up and look at this system. All right. And look at Esau, Edom in particular, and begin to speak out against him. They'll begin to present this taunting proverb, like it says in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. All right. And that's why there's this huge effort to remove history, especially here in the West, from the books. All right. Because, again, the things that they glorified are now a shame unto them, because you have nations who are beginning to call them out. See, 100 years ago, all right, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, these other nations wouldn't speak up against Esau, Edom, and their rulership. All right, they would quietly sit in a corner and take whatever was given to them. Well, now we're in a time through the Spirit where things are beginning to change, and the nations are beginning to be given a new spirit from the Heavenly Father, a spirit of rebellion, all right, to speak up against these things. When you go into Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, it said the stones itself would cry out against this rulership. All right, and that's what you have. Everything is beginning to turn against Esau, because we understand that we're in the time of the end of his rulership and the beginning of it that followeth. All right. Habakkuk 2:16, and it reads, "Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory." All right. So whether it's those Edomites that were dwelling in South Africa, they're being called out. All right. The Edomites on this side, they're being called out even by their own people. All right. When you deal with Britain, when you deal with France, all right, when you deal with the things that have happened to Moabites, China, all right, the Ammonites in Japan, all right, they hold a memorial concerning the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a remembrance of what has been done to them. Even though they play nice in the diplomatic stage, they still remember what's been done to them. But most nations for a long time have not had power to do anything or say anything against the nation that has ruled over them. All right. The scriptures talk about Esau, Edom ruling over the nations with anger. And now everything that he's pushed out is beginning to come back upon him. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 14:4. And it reads that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth. And that's what you notice with all of these nations that are beginning to rise up and speak against Esau. You don't see any other nation come to his defense outside of the Americanized immigrants, all right, who benefit from Esau's rulership. And that's a very small percentage in comparison to the majority of the people on the planet. But nobody's coming to his aid because everyone understands what he's done to get where he's at. And that's why shameful spewing is beginning to pour out of the earth, man. All right, whether it's the environment itself, the Lord put in the spirit on big rocks to drop on ships called Jesus. All right, where people are, Edomites are on vacation. All right, the Edomites are swimming in the Australian Sea, all right, which is, I believe, the Pacific or the sea, the ocean next to Australia. And great white sharks are biting individuals in half on camera. All of these things are a sign through the Spirit that there's a change of power. There's a transition of power beginning. All right, and the Lord is beginning to visit those who have afflicted, who have hurt the earth, all right, who have destroyed the earth. All right, as a matter of fact, let's get that. It's Revelation chapter 14 and I will start down at Slovakia. All right, this is a Revelation 11 and 18, Slovakia. And it reads, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come. And that's what you're starting to see in these press conferences, in these G7 summits, and these gatherings of all these nations. You're starting to see the anger and the frustration of the present rulership. Whether it's the IMF bank that gives these third world countries loans that they can't pay back, all right? Or the ability for the West, particularly America, to go against the very laws that they've made up on the international stage. You're starting to see the nations become more and more angry. All right. And it reads, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants, the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. All right. Because whether it's the system of how resources are distributed, or whether it's the warfare, all right, or whether it's the greed and the way resources are pulled out of the earth is being destroyed under this present rulership. All right, and that's why the scriptures say in Job, the 9th chapter, the earth was given into the hand of the wicked. All right, and their fruits, their actions, the results speak for themselves. And now you have individuals like this guy and many others that are beginning to rise up in abundance and speak against this present rulership of Esau, Edom. And that shows you that we're close to the end. All right, because the Lord said that he will put a spirit on the other nations to rise up and to say, have you become weak as we? Because 100 years ago, these kind of conversations wouldn't even happen on a global scale. I'll even say 60, 70 years ago, 50 years ago, these kind of conversations wouldn't happen in such abundance. All right. Because Esau had the power to afflict nations. But now you're getting to a point where the spirit is being stirred up in these nations where even if they are sanctioned, they don't care. They're speaking up against this rulership because it's wicked. At heart, it's wicked. All right. Whether it's the economy. All right. Whether it's the ability to just go and take fields and covet and take by violence without any consequence. All of these things are being called out now through the spirit. And even in Esau's court system, before you're judged, there's a testimony that's given. All right, your charges are read to you. And that's what the Lord is doing through the spirit of the prophets, beginning with the apostles on down. And he's even stirring up the spirit of the other nations to speak against this present rulership. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying. I just wanted to grab this clip through the spirit and highlight, a beautiful time where nations are beginning to call out what's being done on the earth, man. All right. And that's not a small thing, because, again, 60, 70 years ago, nations, governments, politicians wouldn't have the nerve to call out Esau, Edom for what he's done and what he's still doing. And that shows you that we're at the end. All right. So, Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.